somebody cussing him, somebody cursing him, somebody talking about how bad he was, how wrong he was, how David had brought all this trouble to Saul's house, how it was all David's fault that they were at war, why it was all David's fault that they had no peace in their home. They were constantly blaming David for it. And this little boy Mephibosheth, born into an atmosphere where that man's name, David, was constantly being defamed and profaned in the house that he was being raised in. So the day came when King Saul had gone to fight against another enemy. It's just funny, isn't it? How sometimes you focus on the wrong enemy. Sometimes you focus on the wrong enemy. You see an enemy somewhere, and that's all anybody in the house talks about is David is this and David is that. David's the reason that we got all this trouble. David, David, David. That's all they heard all the time. David's the reason our house is not at peace. So while Saul's focused on trying to fight David, another enemy was rising up called the Philistines that were going to come against them. And they get drawn out into a war that they're not ready for. And King Saul goes out to battle along with his son Jonathan. They go out to fight in this battle. And during that fight, the armies of the Philistines are just destroying the Israelites, and King Saul and his son Jonathan and his other two brothers and the rest of Saul's men are all killed in the battle that day. So the entire leadership of the household of King Saul is destroyed in a moment, in a day, in a battle that they weren't ready for because they were looking at the wrong enemy. So word gets back to the house, back to the palace where little Mephibosheth is now 5 years old. We know all about having a 5-year-old running around the house. We spent Friday night and all day yesterday with our 5-year-old grandson. It's partly why I'm so tired and can't think straight this morning. Man, where in the world that kind of energy come from? That's why children are made for you young people. That's why grandparents borrow them. We don't keep them. We borrow them and send them home. Mephibosheth is 5 years old. He'd been raised his entire life by a nursemaid that had taken care of him, that was looking after him. And the word gets to the house and says that King Saul and Mephibosheth's dad, Jonathan, are both dead. The nursemaid and the whole house in fear, not knowing what it means. Are the Philistines coming in? Are they going to come and take us as well? So the nursemaid grabs up little Mephibosheth and she starts to flee for her life. And as she's running, as she's trying to get away from this enemy that's come up against her, that's brought the man down that was in her house, this enemy that has brought down the authority of their house, an enemy that came in that they weren't expecting. Maybe they feared it. Maybe they knew that at some point an enemy was going to come in. You can't live in an atmosphere where you're constantly talking about somebody else, talking about other people being your problem, other people being the reason you don't have peace and joy in your house, why there never seems to be anything but strife in your house. As long as you keep pointing a finger at somebody else, you're going to keep missing the enemy. You're going to keep pointing at the wrong enemy in your life. So she grabs up Mephibosheth and she goes running. And as she's running with this little 5-year-old boy, she stumbles. We don't know the whole story. We don't know how it happened. We don't know exactly what took place on that day. All we know is that as they're running, she falls. The little boy falls. And as he falls, he's injured in his feet somehow so badly that we see that Mephibosheth, the rest of his life, was lame in his feet. Lame in his feet. I just wonder this morning how many of us have hurt folks in our life when we were just running for hours. How many times has somebody around you been hurt when you were just running for your own life, when fear and trouble had come after you and you didn't mean to, but somehow, imagine how that lady felt the moment she looked down and that little boy that she loved, that she'd been nursing, taking care of for 5 years, is no longer able to walk. Imagine that moment for her. She was just running for her life, running from fear of the enemy that was coming against her. And somehow in the midst of it, she hurt somebody she loved. I wonder how many times we've done it. How many times have I hurt somebody I loved when I was just trying to survive? The word tells us that Mephibosheth goes to live in a place called Lodabar. And he's there for the remainder of his life up until something changes. While he's in Lodabar, he apparently gets married. He has children of his own, and they're living in Lodabar. Now remember who Mephibosheth is. He's a child that was born in a house of a king. He had the blood of a king running through his veins. He had a destiny and a purpose. He was built, he was made to live in a palace, but now he's living in a place called Lodabar. So I went down to the potter's house. The safest place to be. Imagine the safest place. Just think about it. In the midst of your struggles, your storms in your life, the problems that you have, the things that you go through, do you have a safe place? Do you have a place where you feel the safety and protection of that place? And even though everybody in the house is losing their mind, everybody in the house is at war and strife everywhere, but you got a place. Have you got a place in your life where you can feel peace in the midst of your storm? Do you have a place? And do you think about all those safe places throughout the history of your life? When you were young, there's no safer place to be than in the arms of your mother. There's nothing safer than to feel the arms of your mother wrapped around you, the arms of your father wrapped around you as a child. Do you remember how it felt when mama would pick you up and pull her close to you? You can still smell the way her hair smelled when she would pull you up to her shoulder. You can still feel how you felt warm and comfortable, and nothing could touch you when you were in those arms. And you feel that, and somewhere along the line in life, that safe place that you had, is it still there? Do you still have a safe place? Some of us came to church years ago looking for a safe place, hoping that we would come into an atmosphere where it was safe, where I don't feel like everybody's against me, where I can come to church and feel like I belong, feel like I'm accepted, feel like I've got people around me that love me and care for me and want the very best for me. But somewhere along the line, they decided that they were going to build a new church building, build a new sanctuary. And somebody wanted blue carpet and somebody wanted red carpet. And the next thing you do, your safe place is split up because you can't agree on the color of the carpet. Somebody got mad because they didn't get picked to a committee. Somebody got mad because they picked the wrong worship leader. They wanted somebody else. So they said, well, we'll just find folks that think like we do, and we'll go down the road and start our own. I'm preaching better than y'all, amening. Safe places that somehow get disrupted, get broken, safe places in your life. I remember feeling the safety and security of who I was as a little boy. And my mom and dad and their marriage, I was the only child. They never had another child together. I was the only child that they had, and I remember how it felt to go to church with my parents. We went to church 8 times a week. We went to church more times a week than there was days. Twice on Sunday, literally in the Mission Church in Chicago, we went 8 times a week. I was in church the first time when I was 8 days old. And we went to church every night and twice on Sunday. Don't y'all talk to me about having to sit here for 2 hours. I cut my teeth on pews. I watched folks as I crawled. Nowadays we got children's churches and places for the kids to go and learn and do things. You know where I learned? Crawling back and forth from the back of the church to the front of the church underneath the pews. I'd crawl out from under the front pew and watch them shouting and dancing and receiving the ministry of the Lord. Church people to me weren't normal church people. We were in mission churches in the inner city of Chicago. Church for me was drunks and drug addicts and prostitutes. So normal church people kind of freaked me out. I don't know where y'all come from. I remember sitting in the lap of a big Hawaiian man, a homeless Hawaiian man named Brother Don. He got saved in that little mission church. And I remember sitting up on big old Don's lap and looking up in that big Hawaiian face as big old tears flowed down his face as he worshiped God. And I got to watch. That was how I learned what worshiping Jesus looked like. I remember what it felt like to be in an atmosphere where the Holy Ghost could come in and miracle signs and wonders were going on. I'm hungry today for a place where there's something happening in the Spirit of God, where God's moving in His power. We had a safe place. And then I remember the days when Dad and Mom's arguments started. I remember feeling so fearful, so afraid of what it meant, what they were doing, why were they screaming at one another. I didn't understand the dynamics of it. As a 5-6-year-old boy, I didn't understand that. I didn't know what was going on. All I knew was suddenly that safety that I felt because my mom was part of me and my dad was part of me, and the two of them together made me who I was. And that's how I felt. I didn't understand what was going on as their fights got worse and worse. And before I know it, Dad's packed us up and he's moved us to Tennessee, trying to get away from the trouble and the problems that they were having in Chicago. We got to Tennessee and he quit going to church. We stopped going to church. Everything started kind of unraveling as far as who I was and what I thought I was and what life meant to me and what safety meant to me. I didn't understand it anymore. Why don't we used to go to church all the time and now we don't go at all? My dad got increasingly violent and he got increasingly angry because the further he went away from serving and doing what God wanted him to do, the more the king of the flesh rose up. The more Saul rose up. While the king of the Spirit was saying, I'm going to change this. I'm going to bring back worship of God. I'm going to bring us back to what God wants us to be. Sometimes you get in that place where the king of your flesh is at war against the king of your spirit. And there's no greater war on the face of the earth than a war between kings. There's nothing that'll divide you and cause you to not know who you are and bring fear into your life by not surrendering to the king that has been anointed by God, that says the kingdom of your flesh, the kingdom of your old life has got to come to an end. There's a kingdom of the Lord that wants to rise up inside of you. There's a king that wants your life. So I watched that go on, and as Dad and Mom divorced, it ripped me in half. It changed who I was going to be. Some of you know, something happened in your life. Divorce came in and broke up what you thought you saw. What you thought it was going to be, what life was going to be about. Divorce came in and ravaged it and destroyed it and broke up what the vision of what you initially believed was going to be. It just came in and broke you up. And some of you just run for fear. My mom, she just ran for fear, trying to survive. She didn't know by abandoning me and leaving me with my dad in the midst of his struggles that she was leaving me in a place that could get me hurt. She didn't understand it. She was just trying to find a place to survive. I just wonder how many of us have hurt people, have broken people around us while we're just trying to survive. So Mephibosheth ends up living his life in a place called Lodabar when he had been born to live in a palace. The word Lodabar, in its real gut root meaning, it actually means the ghetto. He was born to live in a palace, the son of a king, and he's living in the ghetto. So I went down to the potter's house, and I watched as he worked on the vessel that was in his hands. I watched as he was forming something. In the moment that I walked in the moment that my attention was put on what was in his hands and what he was working on, in that moment I saw what I thought it was. I saw what I thought it was going to be. And if you take a selfie at that moment and say, that's it, I got it. I got the picture of who I am. I got the picture of who I'm going to be. I've got a snapshot of my life. I'm just going to take a selfie right here. I'm going to put it on my mirror. I'm going to put it on my refrigerator, and that's who I am. Some of you took a selfie back in high school. Some of you guys, you just ran that winning touchdown. You just won the game. I didn't. It wasn't me. I had one shot at glory as a football player. We were beating this other team to death. And I went back. The coach said, go in and get that punt and run. I'm like, all right. So I go in to catch the ball. And I'm watching, and I'm in the midst of this ball game, and it's my turn. I'm out on the field, and the guy's about to punt the ball, and if I get it, I get to run. And and that's what you want to do. You dream of those moments. I don't know how many times as boys we go to sleep dreaming about the glory, the moment. I looked up, that boy kicked the ball, and I looked up, and the ball's in the air. My glory day is headed my way. And I looked up and I'm like, yeah. At that moment, I promise, I heard all of the cheerleaders going, Steve, 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 Steve. The crowd was cheering my name. I look up and the ball's coming. There's two other guys on the field. It could have went to either one of them, but this one was mine. So I look up and the ball's headed my way, and it's getting closer. The crowd's getting louder. They're all screaming my name. And my destiny is on my fingertips. My glory days on my hands. And suddenly my glory is slipped out of my hands and is between my legs, rolling across the field. And the poor boy that was next to me had come running my direction. He picks it up, and it's too late. He just got murdered. But we take snapshots of our life in those moments. Click. That's who I am. I walked into the potter's house, and I looked at what he had on the wheel. And as I looked at that right there, if I had stopped and said, oh, hey, stop right there. Potter, stop. Don't change it. Don't change it from what it is. Don't make it anything else. You just stop right there. Let me take a picture of that place, because that's where I feel good. That's the place where I felt like I was somebody. That's the place I felt like I was something, where I felt like I had meaning and purpose in my life. Just stop right there. So we take a picture of that moment. Some of you got the picture of beauty pageant glory. You was prom queen. You come walking out, little tiara on your head. And you're thinking, I'm beautiful. Everybody knows it. I'm pretty. Everybody sees it. I'm going to use my pretty and my beauty. I'm going to get Prince Charming. So you use your beauty. You take a snapshot of who you are. Your personality, your self-esteem, your self-worth is all taken in a snapshot of a moment when you thought you were important, a moment when you thought everybody was recognizing you and looking at you. So you take a snapshot of who you are in that moment, and that's who you want to be the rest of your life. So you use that moment to get your Prince Charming, and 10 years later, you wake up one morning, you look over on the pillow, and Prince Charming has turned into Prince Alarming. That gorgeous boy that you fell in love with in high school, that you used your beauty and your good looks to lure him, took that picture of who you are, thinking that's who you're going to be. You took a selfie of the two of you together and said, that's who we'll be for the rest of our lives. And 10 years later, you're looking at Prince Alarming, and you go, what in the world happened to his hair? You wake up, you look over and say, who the world is that? Got drool running down the side of his face in a puddle of it. He'd been snoring and snorting and making noises under the covers all night long. You mess up and roll over, and the smell rolls out from under the covers, and you almost pass out in that moment. I know some of y'all do that on purpose. You take a snapshot of a place and a moment in your life, and the word says that I took that snapshot, I looked, and I saw the vessel in the hands of the potter as it was in that moment. And maybe you said, I like that. Or maybe it was in that moment you said, God, please don't let me be that. Is that all? Is that me? The word said that as the potter shaped and fashioned the vessel in his hands, that suddenly the clay was marred in his hands. It was marred in his hands. And that thing that you thought was becoming, suddenly something causes it to stop in the midst of what it was going to be, and it's broken. It's no longer what you saw. It's suddenly marred in the hands of the potter. I can understand if Mephibosheth had been injured at the hands of the enemy. If they'd have come in the house and they had broke that little boy, I can understand it. But to be injured, to be hurt, to be wounded in a moment, to be marred in the hands of the one you trust. God, why'd this happen to me? God, it was in that moment. Things were going so good. Life was so good in that moment, Lord. Why couldn't I just take a snapshot, to take a selfie in that moment, and that be the life that I had forever? I was somebody until I lost my job. I was somebody until I came home and there was a note on the door. My wife said, I'm leaving. I was somebody until my child went into rebellion and left my house and hadn't called me in 5 years. I was somebody before I was marred in the hands of the potter. The potter takes the clay and he puts it on the wheel and he begins to work. And I watched Shannon this morning as he was preparing the clay. Let me tell you something. The process, the effort that it takes for clay to get ready for God to prepare it to become what he wants it to be is kind of violent. He was taking that clay and slamming it on the wheel. Everybody, I want a little gentle God. I want a God that just pats me. A little dab of do you, God. I want to just, I'm okay, Lord, just fix my hair. Everything else is fine. just touch me a little bit, God. And God's saying, Do you want me to touch you, or you just want to take a snapshot of where you're at and call it done? He was taking that clay, slam on that wheel before he ever even started. And I just wonder at what point, and I know this is true, before the potter puts the clay on the wheel, he's already got something in mind. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you. I knew what you were going to be fashioned and formed to become. I had a plan for you. I had a purpose for you. Before you ever entered your mother's womb, I knew what I wanted you to look like. Mephibosheth, I intended for you to be born in a palace. That wasn't a mistake. I intended for you to be raised in an atmosphere and a culture where kings make decisions. I wanted you to be formed and fashioned and grow up in a place where the greatness of a kingdom would be born inside of you so that one day you could take your place as a king. But some of us believe that the damage that was done by the things that happened to us in those moments when we took the snapshot and said, that's where I got broken and that's where I'm stuck. That's who I am. I'm just going to go live in Lodabar. I can't take care of myself. And another definition of Lodabar meant a place with no pasture. A place with no pasture. A place where there's no way to produce. I'm going to go live in a place because of my damage where I'll never become fruitful. Where I'll never bear fruit and I'll never be anything than just the man called Mephibosheth who was lame in both feet. So I looked at what the potter was doing in his hands, and suddenly it was marred. The potter's hands, it's not looking initially and always. It can't immediately go from just the lump on the wheel to what Shannon's got there. He took his hands and began to work. And when he finds a hard place, he begins to work it out. And suddenly that hard place is so solid, so strong, that he has to just break it down, find that hardness, and begin to work it out. Is God at a place in your life where you're in His hands and you keep wondering why in the world it all keeps stopping? Why you take a snapshot thinking this is life, this is what I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to look like, this is what my family's going to look like, and all of a sudden you're marred in the hands of the potter. And you think you're damaged. I'm damaged. I'll never be anything else. I'm damaged. Look now, even in the hands of God. I can understand being marred and being messed up when I'm out in the world. I can understand when I'm doing my own thing and rebelling against God. I can understand being messed up and marred at the hands of my own will, at the hands of my own purposes, at the stupid stuff I do. But God, I'm yours. Why am I marred? Why is my snapshot not what I thought it was going to be, Lord? See, the problem is you need to change the setting on your camera from photo to video. Because what God's doing in you is a work that starts off with a lump of clay and becomes what He envisioned. Out of all the things in creation that God created, everything that God created in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and they were without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And God said, let there be. God said, let there be waters. God said, let there be a division. God said, let there be animals. Let there be fish. Let there be birds of the air. Let there be a sun for the day and a moon for the night. Let there be. And He spoke everything except for you. you. He got down on his knees and took the dirt in his hands and began to fashion it. And he formed man out of the dust of the earth. He didn't speak you into existence. He formed you. The works of his hands. Consider with me the works of his hands. Look at the glory of the work of God. And then realize this, out of all the things God created, it was you that he wanted to fashion with his hands. So Mephibosheth is living in Lodabar. He's had a family. He's got a wife and children. But he's living in a place where he's no pasture. David has become the king of all of Israel many, many years later. David's in his palace and he's looking over all of the things that God has blessed him with, and he sees that he's got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of ownership of what used to belong to King Saul. And David speaks up and he says, hey, does anybody know? Is there anybody left of the house of Saul? This man named Ziba says, yes, sir, there's a man named Mephibosheth who's the son of Jonathan that lives in Lodabar. David said, well, somebody go get him. And they said, well, but King, he's lame in both feet. David said, go get Mephibosheth and bring him to me. So they go and bring Mephibosheth from Lodabar to the palace. You see, he's familiar with this palace. Imagine that 5-year-old boy that left broken one day years ago, at 5 years old, is now being brought back to the gates that he used to enter as royalty. The gates, the place where they used to swing open the doors for him. The place where he could run and roam as a little boy, playing in the courtyards of the kingdom. And as he walked through those courtyards that day, he looked around and said, I remember I was made for this. I was made for this. They brought him through there. Now a full-grown man, but they're having to help him along because Mephibosheth is lame in both feet. They bring him to the throne room of King David, and they say, David, here is Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth bows down before King David, and David begins to talk to him and get to know him. And Mephibosheth, in his Lodabar mentality, he says, what do you want to do with me? What do you have to do with me, O King David? I'm just a dead dog. And I just think that maybe somebody here this morning, you think you're damaged. That's the way you look before the Lord. That you think, oh, I don't have a right here anymore. This is familiar. I know this feels right. And what this preacher's telling me this morning feels right. I'm hearing something that's stirring down in my soul that's reminding me that I was born for more than a Lodabar. But I'm hearing his words speaking to me, and all the thoughts and all of the stuff of my damage just keep saying, you're just a dead dog. You don't have any right to this. Why are you even here? You shouldn't be here in the presence of a king. And the Lodabar in you is screaming out, you don't have a right, when the blood in you is saying, yes, you do. Hallelujah. When the blood coursing through your veins is declaring greater than the thing that's speaking in your ear, that false lie of the enemy telling you you don't have a right to the things of God. You don't have a right to be in his presence. What's inside of you says, yes, I do. David says, Mephibosheth, you stand up. You listen to me. I'm going to give you the dominion. Everything that your grandfather Saul owned. I'm giving you everything that he owned. I'm giving you the land. I'm giving you the houses. I'm giving you the stuff. I'm even going to give you the servants that had pledged themselves to his house forever. A day ago, I was a lame man in Lodabar, and suddenly, in one moment, at the word of a king, I'm rich beyond measure. That reminded me I wasn't born for Lodabar. I was born for kingship. I was born to be blessed and highly favored of God. So David says, listen. Listen. Some of you, God, you say, okay, I hear you, Lord. I hear you telling me that I've got an inheritance in the saints, that I'm an heir and joint heir with Jesus. I hear you telling me that, but I'm lame. How am I going to take care of dominion in the spirit? God, I'm lame. I'm hurt. I'm broke. I got a snapshot of who I was and who I thought I was going to be, and I don't see who you're making me to be. I don't understand how this is going to happen. I'm lame in my feet, and I can't do this, Lord. Lord said this to me as he was giving me these words to bring to you. He said, tell them, ask them this question. Did you really think you could do it by yourself? Did you really think you could do this on your own? He said, Ziba, you and your household serve King Saul. Isn't that right? And Ziba said, yes, sir. He said, Ziba, I want you to go down to the properties, to the land that belonged to Saul, and I want you and your family and all that is yours, I want you to take care of everything that now belongs to Mephibosheth. I want you to make it fruitful and cause it to multiply and be blessed, and all the spoils and the riches of it come back to Mephibosheth. So from that day forward, and David said, but as for Mephibosheth, you're going to sit at my table and you're going to eat with my sons. You're going to eat with my children. You're going to eat as an heir and a joint heir with God in this place. I'm going to give you a place at my table, and you're going to eat with the king every day of your life. You see, because just trying to get into this, walk into this thing. If you guys see me when I'm just out on my own, you'll see a lame man. You see me out from under God and His covering and His purpose, His plan for me. You see a lame man. But when I sat down at the table, I looked just like everybody else. The Lord's prepared a table for you. He's prepared a place for you at His table. He wants you to know you're His child. Mephibosheth said, Lord, David, why have you done all this? He said, because I have a covenant with the son of the king. See, there's a covenant that God has with the blood of His Son that says, whosoever will, let him come. You don't have to live your life with a snapshot of where you failed. You don't have to live your life with a snapshot of your glory days. God is saying this morning, the days before you are days when you're going to sit at the table of a king. You don't have to worry about what you used to be or what you used to do, about glory then, because I'm bringing you from glory to glory to glory to glory. I'm bringing you in to a new place in me, a place at the table with the king. Let's stand together this morning. Your damage can't stop your destiny as long as you don't resist the hands of the potter. Your damage can't stop your destiny as long as you'll stop resisting the hands of the potter. If you'll bow your heads, please. Lord, we thank you for what you've said to us today. We thank you for your work in our lives. Thank you, Lord, that when you found that bad spot in me, you found those moments when I wasn't ready for you to make me into the finished product, Lord, that what you intended, what your vision was from the day I was born is not hindered, it's not stopped because you found a bad spot in me. Did you make a mistake? Did you make a wrong decision? And now you're stuck. And you think that's who you are forever? Nobody ever see me any different. I'm always going to be the girl that messed up and got pregnant before she got married. I'm always going to be the boy that messed up and got a DUI and hurt somebody in that car wreck. I'm always going to be that person. People are always going to see me as that person that did that thing. I looked and the clay was marred in the hands of the potter. Listen, your failures can't take you out of his hand. Your mistakes can't take you out of his hands. What you did can't take you out of his hands. Just begin to declare this. I belong to the Lord. He is the potter. I'm the clay. Lord, find those places in us that are resisting you, keeping me from becoming the vision that you have of me. Lord, help me to trade in the vision I've had for myself for what you've got planned for me. I believe, God, that greater is your work, your desire, your works, your vision for me than the vision I've had for myself. Lord, I believe that you're able to do exceedingly abundantly above anything that I ask or think. You've not yet seen, eye has not seen, and ear has not heard what God has for those. Your vision has not seen it yet. Your ears have yet to hear what God truly has planned for you. And you keep holding on to that thing that you thought you were years ago. And God's saying, I'm doing a new thing. I'm doing a new thing in you. Quit holding on to yesterday and let me make you who I've called you to be. I've got a vision for you, son. I've got a vision for you, daughter. Like this pot sitting on this platform. When Shannon took it in his hands, it was just a lump of clay. But its purpose was to be formed into a vessel that God could fill up and He could renew and restore. Bring water to dry places. It has purpose, not because it was a lump of clay, but because it went through a process in the hands of God. It has purpose because God had a plan. If you're here this morning, this word speaking to you in any way, would you lift your hand and say, God's speaking to my heart. He's speaking to my life today. I'm ready to say, God, make me, mold me into who you want me to be. I'm trading in what I thought I could be because I found out something. I thought I was just a lame man meant to live in the ghetto of Lodabar. But there's something coursing in my veins today reminding me that I'm a son, I'm a daughter of a king. I'm an heir of God. I've got royal blood flowing through me. So Lord, as we've lifted our hands, acknowledge we're hearing your voice. I'm praying today if there's anybody lost in this house that they're no longer lost, that you've saved souls in this place. Lord, only you know the hearts of men. Lord, only you can declare whether somebody has been born again or not. Lord, but I believe that there's some life change happening here today. There's some life change happening. Where there was death, there's life. Where there was no hope, now there's hope, God. Where there was no future, now there's future. Lord, somebody that had quit dreaming is dreaming again. Somebody that had quit hoping is hoping again in this place. Is that you? Would just shout out, that's me. I'm receiving what God's got for me. Come on and give him a praise in this place. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Who would have thought that when Jacob and Daniel and Shannon got together and said, we got an idea that this little vase would be here to declare to you God's got you in his hands. God's got you in his hands. You belong to the Lord. For I know whom I have believed in, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. He's able to keep you. Man, I feel that. Somebody needs to hear that. Your thoughts have been that God's not big enough for your problem. I'm here to declare to you today, you've got a God who's big enough. You've got a God who's big enough. Anybody witness with me today? You found a God that's big enough in Jesus. Is he big enough? Hallelujah. Amen. Well, just a few moments of worship. If you want to come around and just touch this as a point of contact, just believe that God has anointed this moment for you to remind you he's making you. Look at your neighbor and say, he's still working on me. Amen. All right. God bless you, Brother Sean. You got it from here.